Today is December 30th, 2016, the last trading day of the year. And I would like to take this opportunity to have a brief review of my trading year, some mistakes that I made, and some lessons learned. Perhaps it will be of some benefit for you, and primarily I'm doing this as an exercise for myself. But I'm not much of a chartist really, but I think the chart is the best way to tell the story of what my 2016 trading career became and how it unfolded. So for starters, we ended 2015 kind of traded in this little range, and I'm not even going to go backwards and get the whole context, but we were in this little range, and the first day of the year, January 4th, first trading year, obviously you can see was a bit of a red candle, and we moved down to this little prior low, and so I initiated some positions and got myself some long deltas, thinking that it might move back to the top of this range or continue to rally. And with the down day and increase in volatility. Also on the bottom here, I put the VIX, which, as I've said before, is not a perfect measure of volatility, but it's a good enough proxy for this purpose. So you can see that the VIX had moved up to the 20 range from a low down here at 15. So obviously the options are more expensive. I'm always a net seller of options, so my account was down. I can't remember exactly how much money, but we were down a few $100s at least on day one. So on the first day of the year, the account was negative, and I had some long deltas. And my plan was, if down move continued, which obviously in hindsight it did, that I was going to add more positions with iron condors, which have a slight short delta negative bias when they're initiated. And so if I have a few long deltas and it's getting a little bit too long, I can just throw on another iron condor. I'm putting them on at elevated volatility levels, so that's great. I'm getting some short deltas to relieve my long deltas to help neutralize my position. That's great. So it's all a win-win-win. The problem is, and this doesn't actually look quite so severe on this scale, but from the first day of the year down here, this is about 11% move in 13 bars in 3 weeks. That's a pretty significant move, and this is a pretty significant uptick in volatility from this low down here in I've got the wrong drawing on. Let's change this to trend line. So from this low down here towards the end of January up to mid-January. I'm sorry, from the low in December up to mid-January. I mean, that's a 16-point jump on the VIX. That's a big move. It was over 100% change there. So I mean, that's a big move. That's a big increase in volatility. What was pushing a lot of pressure on my short Vega positions, as you would imagine. And so mistake number one I made of the year is I wasn't paying close enough attention to my position sizing and how much cash I was putting in as I was continuing to add more positions to neutralize myself out. And my position sizes got too large. I was over leveraged. And that became painfully apparent on this day here on January 20th. And it just so happened I was traveling that day, and so I really missed this entire down move and tail. And so at the end of the day, I was very relieved that I was not in front of the computer, because that would have been very uncomfortable moments with anxiety and stomach acids. So I had dodged a little bit of a bullet that day. And in fact, we got this little relief rally back up to here, and here was mistake number two. That the account was down, pretty significant numbers. I'm not going to give dollar amounts because it's irrelevant, but it was down a good precision. It was a decent sized drawdown of the account. It was definitely not pleasant times down here. And of course, with this rally back up and the volatility coming down, up around this day, got a massive amount of money came back into the account and got it almost back to break even. Not quite back to break even for the year. And so this is one of those days where we had this little doji here, this little small, relatively minor day, and I think, okay, great, things are coming down. I can just hold these neutral positions. Everything will be okay. Just give another day to see what happens. And after the market closed, I went for a walk And almost within half an hour on my walk, I was thinking, why didn't I just take a bunch of stuff off? I knew I was over leveraged, and these whole couple of weeks, I was thinking, man, over leveraged. I need to start peeling some stuff off. I took a little bit off, but not enough. And so after that day on my walk, I was telling myself, I should have just taken off, a quarter, a third, a half. I should have just taken off a ton of size, got things under control, reduced the risk, but maybe it's a little bit of greed or just overly optimistic that okay, this little move is over. We're gonna have some sideways trendy or trendless range bound markets, and my neutral type strategies are gonna work really well. Well, obviously that didn't happen. So the very next day we get pretty significant down day, and right back down to this low. And wouldn't you know, I was just feeling the pain, and market took out this low during that morning, just not by much, but I mean as it came down and took out that low, I hit my point of maximum pain and frustration and closed a lot of my puts for large losses, and even got myself, I don't think I got myself short, but got myself close to neutral. And sure enough, we got a big reversal, and then we reversed up here, and I think, okay, this is just probably another dead cat bounce type thing. I think I started selling calls in here, so I'm even getting myself short here. So now I've lost with long deltas on the way down, and I'm losing with short deltas on the way up. And sure enough, I'm looking at my chart, blah blah blah. Oh, here's perfectly this. It's going to bounce right back up here. This is going to start the top of a new trading range. So man, I am happy to be short deltas here. And look at this. We get this little move back down a couple of days. Like, okay, this is looking great. And then off to the races. And so mistake number 3, when you get this day, which obviously in hindsight is pretty apparent that it's getting pretty strong to the upside. I, for whatever reason, decided that I didn't believe it and I was going to stay short, and so I pretty much fought this entire trend for a good 2 months, and that was very painful. So lost a decent, had a pretty good sized drawdown here, had a chance to take a lot of it off, close to break even, or at least with much reduced losses. Lost some more money here, flipped the trades over to say, okay, look like it's just going to keep going down, and then boom. So I was just basically on the wrong side of the market the entire spring. And mistake number 4 then are a couple of things. We decided to move from Texas to California, and we were undertaking that process in this time frame. So that is a major life event. Which is probably a wise time to take a break, especially after things haven't been going quite so well. And of course, I was obstinate and stubborn, and I was upset that the account was down, and I felt like I needed to get some money back because where moving was expensive. And so all these things in hindsight, it seems silly, and I see very clearly. But in the midst of this time, was not thinking clearly, and was very, very emotional, and not feeling very good about myself because we were down substantial amounts of money here, and things calmed down a little bit. So started making some money back. So this was doing pretty good. And I remember this was when the process, we were driving across the country to get to California, and we're staying with family until the house is ready. And so we had this little drawdown or a pullback. I thought, perfect, bottom of the range. I'm gonna get longs. Like, I've been fighting this thing. I've been fighting this uptrend for so long. Fine, I'll get on board. I'll jump on board with everyone else. So I started to get some long deltas here on a more of a short-term butterfly. Everything's looking fine for a couple of days, and then boom, we get this move, which again does not look that dramatic on this chart, but. That's 3.5% move. I mean, that's not a big deal, but 3.5% or 3.25% in 8 days, it's not nothing. I mean, it's a decent move. But it just so happened that this was my June expirations, which was just a couple of weeks left. It just so happened that as it got in here and broke through that low, I was like, you know what? I can't hold on to this anymore. It looks like the bottom could drop out. So I closed all my June positions for a decent loss. that I'd had some bullish leanings, and then sure enough, what you know, boom, just turns right around, rallies, and of course now we get back to the top of this range. I start leaning short, it takes me out again. So just on the wrong side, just and I, you know, I'm not don't pretend or claim to be a market analyst and a predictor of the future, and I have a high degree of skepticism for anyone who purports to have expertise in those areas. So I think of it as a lot of there's a lot of randomness. The market is very very random. The positions are a random transaction. You have a little bit of edge on your side, but even something like roulette, where the casino has a positive edge and a positive expectancy, and you can have extended runs where the casino loses. And so the same thing, even in a really good trading system, you can have extended amounts of time where you're wrong. And it just so happened I was on the wrong side here, I was on the wrong side here, just got wrong here, on the wrong side here. Just fighting it. This is Brexit, and you know, from my little bit of reading, I thought the whole thing was overblown. Here we get this, you know, this spike in the volatility leading into the event. I think perfect. You know, get this. Options are expensive in front of a news event. That's a great time to put on neutral trades. And kerblamo, we get this huge spike down. So obviously I'm getting very defensive, thinking, okay, looks like bottom, and then once again, a V bottom, huge rally. I'm short, just fighting it. And it's around this time where we'd moved, we got the house, we had a couple of vacations scheduled, and I finally reached the point of, you know, mental exhaustion, and just I realized I need to take a break. And so, you know, we got a few good weeks in here. You know, the account, some of the, you know, the losses have been eased, so some money's coming back in the account. I was like, you know what, let's just pretty much shut it down. I'm going to be going on a cruise, so I was on a boat. I really didn't have good internet access, so I can't manage this stuff, so let's just shut it down. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, just as the way this year went, you know, this was pretty much the ideal 2 months, or August, September, almost 3 months, pretty much the ideal 3 months to have neutral, trendless type strategies on. And I was completely out of the market, and then had very small positions as I eased my way back in. So this, once again, just happened to be leaning left when it went right, and just on the wrong side. But nevertheless, despite the fact that I was underinvested, and you know, I had made several mistakes in the first part of the year, and then I happened to miss the really good times. Somewhere, I don't remember the exact date, but somewhere here in October, my account went positive for the first time in the year. And you'd think I might remember that, because it felt like a pretty momentous accomplishment, I would have to say. Because there's at this point down here, and even up in here somewhere, the drawdown was not insignificant. The percentage of the account was, and it was a fairly large number, which can play havoc on your mental and emotional, which is going to lead into, I'm going to have some lessons, and that is certainly one of them. So yeah, so went positive here in October. Then of course we get the election nonsense, and you know, this little drop, and then this really ridiculous, ugly rally. But I will have to say, you know, obviously I call it an ugly rally just because, you know, this is what I like to see. I like to see trendless, range bound, or even, you know, not that it has to be this narrow. You know, you find me something like this. You know, this has a little bit of a decent range. You know, obviously this whole fake out was difficult, and these V bottoms are extremely difficult to trade. But yeah, so even, you know, even a wider range. Of course, narrow ranges are great. So ranges are great for my style of trading, and that's another mistake, and something that to continue to do this, I need to define a way, which is not going to be perfect, but just define a way to categorize the current market regime. Is it in a trading range, mean reversion type regime, or it is in a trending momentum type regime? And depending on the regime that, whatever definition I use, whatever my criteria is, depending on that regime, I need to adjust my strategies accordingly, or at the very least trade two offsetting strategies, so I can have plenty of trendless range bound structures like iron condors and strangles and butterflies and those sorts of things. But I would need to offset that with some directional strategies as well, in case we do get into these trending markets where okay, my trending market is going to make money and my trendless strategy is gonna lose. But I've built in a little bit of a hedge, and then so I mean I need to test that. I would have to develop. I mean that would take quite a bit of work and effort to do that. But if I want to continue to be a professional trader, that is work that has to get done, and that is something that needs to happen in the business. But I will say, not really to my credit, but I manage this much better than I did over here. And despite the fact that I really don't like to see these type of prolonged moves with no roll pullbacks and no trading ranges, I did much better through here. And again, as we got up to these highs, I was happy to have some short deltas, expecting that this range, or expecting slash hoping that this range might hold. And then when it broke, other than the fact that I made a mistake on this day because I wasn't really paying attention to a position and I should have closed it. So other than a small mistake there, I got a little bit more aggressive to the upside and mitigated some of the losses of this trend. And then these last few weeks, things went nice. Although it is I think it's ironic and kind of funny that today, with a spike in volatility and the fact that I've been experimenting with some more bullish to neutral type strategies, with this pullback in price and increase in volatility, the account's down. I think it was $2,000. So I think it was just kind of a fitting end to the year to have a decent down day in my P&L, because the first day of the year we started negative and we didn't go positive for 10 months, and might as well end on a negative day, losing some money. But in the grand scheme of things, one day is not a big deal. My time frame for this thing is months and weeks, and not weeks, months and years and decades. That's my time frame for this sort of investing style. So that is a little blow by blow of just partially some mistakes that I made, and the other part of just being unlucky. I was just on the wrong side of the market for most of the year, really. And when my strategy really shined and came into its own, I was gone. I was out and I was underinvested. So I did not capitalize on the good times, and I sure as hell went through a lot of bad times. So just in contrast, 2015 we had. I guess I will show the market. I mean, look at this. I mean, this was just absolute gorgeous. This was just amazing. Look at this trading range. So yeah, so from March through August was just crazy good for me. And even despite this wackiness in the fall, things calmed down a bit into the spring. So 2015 was my best trading year ever. 2016 was pretty much the worst until we finally went positive here, and it ended up not great, but not so bad. So certainly a tale of 2 years for me. And so some of the lessons that I've taken away from this year: number one, be extremely cautious if you're trying to trade during major life events. And so another little factor is my son was born here in October, October 29th. And that is a really good time to not be trying to make risk-based decisions, because excitement and sleep deprivation and all sorts of things are happening. And so I did reduce my size quite a bit, but it would have been wise to just be completely out entirely for a good while, honestly. So that was happening. We moved halfway across the country. That is a major life event, and during most of that time I was still involved and trying to manage this stuff. And so again, lack of sleep, and there's a baby, and emotions of moving, and expenses and unplanned problems, and blah blah blah. So it's a difficult time to try to be running this business, and it's in hindsight is incredibly unwise. And it's really a basic tenet that you would think any halfway savvy or sensible person would know, not to try to undertake these types of risky decisions where you're in the midst of a completely uncertain environment and your brain does crazy things. on top of all the other emotional and physical stress going on, it's really a bad idea to try to be trading. And of course, I ignored that, and I paid the consequences for that decision. Lesson number 2, and this one is I've learned it's a lot easier to say. I still haven't got into the core of who I am, and so it's not quite true for me, but this is absolutely a pearl of wisdom that I learned from quite a few of my mentors. I heard people say it over and over again, and and I agreed with it at the time. Intellectually, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I absolutely agree with that. But I really got to live it and feel it, roll deep into my heart, soul, whatever you want to describe the core of a person. Um, I am not my trading results. So I was not a genius in 2015, and I'm not a moron in 2016. So, the fact that I made lots of money through here is not because I'm brilliant. And every time I saw some chart pattern and got short up here because of whatever reason, because I'm such an expert trader. And when I sold some puts down here and got some long deltas, and I'm such a genius because the market went back up. Yeah, it's just I was playing a trading range, and the trading range happened to hold. I mean, I was playing a trading range here, and obviously it did not. I was playing a trading range through here, and I just got on the wrong side. I was fighting a trend, expecting a muted reaction to this Brexit thing, which didn't happen. And then got on. I was like, okay, look, this is looking like some pretty serious selling. Let's be careful and protect the downside. And then Kerbluko, just right around, rip your face off type of thing. And so just I'm flipping heads and the market's going tails, and just one of those things. So, but despite the fact intellectually knowing that my P&L through here being negative does not make me a bad person, does not make me a failure, but it sure as hell feels feels that way. And one of the turning points for my year was I can't remember the day, somewhere through in here. But it's just another day where the market's up and I'm short and I'm losing money. And when's this damn rally gonna stop? And just at least go sideways for a little while. So in the afternoon, I would take my son for a walk in the stroller, and he was at the time facing me, and he was taking a nap. And I'm sure I was mopey and feeling depressed and life is terrible, woe is me type of thing. And so he's sleeping and he wakes up and he looks in my face and he starts to cry. And I realize, my body language is exuding tension and just negative, just waves of negative energy are coming off of me. And obviously, my wife is very impacted by this. My family, my son is picking up on this, and so I really, it has to stop. I can't keep doing this. I can't live this way. Obviously the losing the money is not good, but just living in that sort of mental framework and emotional state, I mean, it's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for any of the people I'm around. So major changes need to happen, and another lesson there is your mental and emotional capital, if you want to think of it that way. So obviously you have your trading capital, the dollars that are in your account. That has a huge impact on what you can do, how much cash you have in reserve, influences what sort of positions you can take. And once you use up all your capital, you can't put on any new positions. And if you blow up your account and you lose all your capital, you can't trade anymore. So obviously you need to preserve your capital. You need to protect your cash, your margin, your financial reserves. And similarly, you need to protect your emotional and psychological capital. And I was not taking care of that. And I was becoming very depleted, and I had used up my reserves, and I was on an emotional margin call here in the spring and early summer. And unfortunately, when you get on an emotional margin call, no one comes knocking on your door and tells you to stop and forces you to quit. You can keep plowing on ahead, and I did. And it was a revelation that day walking my son, and I knew something had to change, and that change didn't come quickly, but through the summer I started making changes. I had a dear friend invited me to a conference that was in August, with a personal growth type thing, which I had never paid any attention to or had any interest in. And sure enough, that conference was really a life changer. And I've become much more focused and put a lot of effort into growing myself as a person, becoming mentally stronger, becoming more disciplined, and really just improving all aspects of life, fitness, health, diet, um, emotional strength, uh, thinking through decision making, how to interact with risk, how to exist in a environment of complete uncertainty. And despite all these nice option models that we have, and probabilities and statistics, and we can do some really cool things, and the models are pretty good. You know, if you won't admit it intellectually, your body knows it. Subconsciously, you are well aware that this is a completely uncertain environment, which looks a lot like randomness and feels a lot like randomness. That anything can happen, like this Brexit thing. You can get 5% moves overnight. You can get after the election. You can get a 5% move in a couple hours, and that's just one day. And it could be you can get a 15% move in a day. I mean, what was 87 was 25% or so, but you can get a 10-15% move in a day. And go look at your positions. Go look at your retirement accounts. Just imagine what a 15% one day down move looks like. I mean, maybe you lived through it in 2008. What's a 50% move look like in the course of a couple of months? That can happen. Depending on your time frame and how long you're involved in the market, it probably will happen again in your lifetime. So those are things that you have to think about. You have to prepare for. And so I've spent a lot more time working on myself in those areas rather than spending a lot of time trying to find the next whiz bang charting technique and analytical tools and indicators and reading news and all those things that people do to try to find an answer or a solution. I think if you have a strategy with a positive edge, assuming you have a strategy that works, and however you come to that conclusion and you test it and become convinced and confident of that, my experience and observations, and I don't think it really can be argued, is that if you can get to that point where you have a strategy that's good and you have the basic skills necessary to work your orders and execute these trades, it's 90 plus, 95 plus. It becomes almost exclusively a mental game. It's very much a mental game, and becomes not just mental and psychology and abstract. It becomes very personal because every one of us have tendencies. One of my tendencies is I don't like to be wrong. That's not uncommon. It's a very male thing. Don't like to be wrong. Don't like to take losses. So if I'm leaning some short deltas here during this rally, I mean, of course I don't want to be wrong. And every day it just gets worse. And then as I've said before, you can look at these patterns, this price, and you can always justify any decision you make. And so you can look at this thing and which I would often say is, this thing's up 12% in 22 days. This thing's up 12% in a month. That's ridiculous. I mean, it's way overdone. It's got to stop. It's got to slow down. And I'm not saying I'm not thinking it's going to crash. Like it just needs to stop. It needs to take a break. It needs to go sideways for a while. And so so you can justify short. And then look, it's up 12% in a month. Oh, now it's up 13%. This is even more ridiculous. Well, now it's up 14%. This is even crazier. So you can just, if you want to, you can keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter and keep fighting and fighting and fighting a rally until you run out of money, and then you can't do that anymore. And there are people that do that and have done that. And so it becomes much more of an internal thing of, why am I fighting this? Why? And what is it that is causing me to refuse to take a loss, to refuse to admit that I'm wrong, to refuse to see that the market regime is changing and it's becoming more of a momentum trending environment? And why am I resisting flowing with that and moving? And that becomes the real goal to mine, in my opinion. Fortunately or unfortunately, another realization for me this fall, in the last couple of months, and it's been fairly apparent, but I've been resisting the truth of it, is that with my current account size and the realistic type of returns that I can make, that this is not going to pay my bills exclusively, which was a goal and a dream that I had set several years ago and was working pretty well. But we just with the expenses from moving and other things, it's just not realistic anymore. So I need additional income streams. I need additional revenue, and that's a lot of time and effort and thinking and soul searching has gone into that since June really, because even back then, obviously with the losses, then it was very apparent that something needed to happen, and even with the better second half of the year and ending on a decently positive note, it's still it's not enough. So this something else is going to have to happen, and so that has been a good lesson, and the fact to embrace that. And it was very painful realization because it felt like my dream of I could be a full-time options trader and this is going to provide for the rest of my life. I mean, that dream is no more, and that felt like a really terrible thing. But with some great conversations with people I've met as part of this focused effort to dedicate myself to growing as a person, you can change that. You can change that mentality. So the fact that I could look at this year and say, oh my gosh, everything was against me, and they ran this market up, and they knew what my positions were, and all the excuses and blaming that people do to alleviate themselves from having to take responsibility and look at reality. I mean, I could make all those arguments, and just the sheer number of almost comical times where I would get out almost at the absolute low tick of the day. It happened over and over and over. And this is just SPX. Make sure you pick the chart for NDX and Russell. It can show you some amazing parts where at the worst possible moment I made some large moves in my positions and it just backfired. Or if you've been watching my position review, that NDX butterfly, like I put it on and the very next day it was down several $100, and it never got any better than that. I mean, just immediately, it just did not work from the get-go, and that happened so many times this year. But that's trading. That's part of the random nature of this. You never know what the next trade is going to bring, and so you can take that as a negative and say, oh, the whole thing's rigged, or blah blah blah. My life is terrible. Whatever sort of crazy excuse you want to come up with, or become a victim mentality. So you can do that, and you could quit, or just continue churning away, doing the same thing, blaming somebody else, and probably experiencing very mediocre results. Or you can look as an opportunity to reevaluate, and so I've reframed my thinking that this door, it's not closing, because I can obviously still do this. I've got this skill and a certain amount of ability, and some decent sized capital to generate some income through this, but I need something else. And so rather than thinking this as the death of my dream and life is terrible, I think of it almost as winter is here and there's going to be springtime. And out of not being able to pursue this, it has spurred me on to other endeavors and to grow and stretch and pursue investing techniques and strategies that I wouldn't have if this had been a better year, which was more in line of what we needed to make for our expenses. I wouldn't pursue other investment strategies and ideas, and I think those are going to actually become more fruitful and even better for me long term. So out of some painful times and some trials and some subpar results, I think something even better is going to happen, and I'm going to become an even better person for being driven to the point of realizing that I need to work on myself a lot, and I need to strengthen my mind and work through emotions and develop all those skills. Which again, I see that as that's going to be a tremendous win as my 1-year-old grows, and I'm interacting with him and teaching him about emotions and trying to model for him those sorts of behaviors and how to deal with emotions and express them, and like all those sorts of things. You can take all these lessons from. Hey, look, yeah, we're clicking buttons, and we've got red candles and green candles, and it's numbers on a screen, and we're making money. It's not that but you can draw a lot of profound wisdom about life through this experience, which is one of the reasons I love this. It's one of the amazing things. And I can't remember if I've said it before, but I thought when I was first getting involved with this, with my computer science background and some math, this is all statistics and probabilities. This is great, and I can analyze stuff with spreadsheets and databases, and this is a big computer game. I was completely unprepared for the fact that there's so much psychological, mental, emotional work that has to be done. That this amazing thing called the market can just absolutely bring it out of you, and whatever little resistance you have to the market, it takes a little finger and it'll poke and poke and poke and poke and poke, and it is unrelenting and it is merciless and it does not care about you. And if you have some hang up about taking a loss and you refuse to admit you're wrong, it'll just poke and poke and poke, and you can fight it all you want, but you will lose your account, which has been the experience of many people over the course of, not just centuries but millennia of the amount of time when humans have been interacting with each other and making markets and trading. These same patterns of behavior happen again and again. So the final lesson for me is take what has been some difficult times and frankly some dark times, and make those plant that as a seed, which is going to grow into something amazing and beautiful and far beyond what my expectations were for this as a career. I think what I have stumbled upon and I'm teaching myself / learning and learning from others, I think it's going to far exceed what I thought was capable with this style of investing. So I don't know what 2017 is going to bring. Right now I feel like the option still provides my primary source of income, so I will be continuing to trade, obviously. I'm transitioning more into I prefer the longer term hands-off type of trades. I think I'm going to really focus even more and more on that. And the butterflies can make some really nice money in the sideways-y range type times, but just even though I trade them at a longer duration than most, it still requires a little too much management with the number of accounts that I manage. So I think I'm just going to get away from that entirely and just stick to longer term, wider strategies that hopefully require very, very little of my time and attention, so I can put that time and attention in other places that I believe will be more fruitful as I learn a new type of investing and new markets. So that will be my focus for the early part of 2017. Very simple option strategies. If I can just make a few $1,000s here and there and continue to cover the monthly expenses, I would consider that a victory. And then I think these other endeavors will blossom and really start to outpace what we're doing here. So yeah, I don't it's interesting. I don't know what the future holds for options trading. I feel like I'm coming to a transition point or a crossroads, and I'm not giving up or walking away from it, but it certainly is diminishing in my day-to-day thinking. And it used to be all-consuming for quite a few years. This was what I was very passionate about, and so it has diminished greatly, and it has become much more of a back burner activity that, because I still have retained some skill and confidence, I continue to do it, but I'm much more excited about new ventures. So as a final note, we'll just use that as a little bit of a lesson and a parable for you, if you can find some touch point in your life in 2016. Maybe think back on some of the missteps, mistakes you might have made, or just random bad things that might have happened in your life, and see if you can turn those around. See if you can take that, reframe it, and use it as a springboard and the next first step into something even better. I love the phrase "failing forward." So all those mistakes that I made, I then went back in my trading plan and and thought through, did some deep internal searching of why do I exhibit some of these same patterns of behavior? What's the real underlying cause? And that is not a comfortable task to undergo, to really dig in and try to understand yourself at that level. Very few people are willing to do that. But I think, as I've said before, I think that's where the real gold is. If you want to be especially a shorter term trader, where I mean you need to focus and you're being pushed and pulled with the market forces and your psychology and your mental game. I think that is absolutely necessary work, as much, if not more so, than tweaking your strategy and analyzing the market. So there you go. There's 2016 in the books. Um, some bad, some not so bad, some even worse, and then finally some good. And what really is this is a highlight for me in summary is this is a personal thing. I'm more of a quiet, private, introverted type person, and I think one of the biggest positive in this whole process is this has really it forced me to move away from those tendencies and seek out other people and help. And that has just caused an explosion of great things in my life. It just is amazing how if you could take a little effort and just surround yourself with some amazing, incredible people, and then have them introduce you to some other amazing, incredible people, your life can change radically in just a few weeks. Certainly in several months, but within a 2-3 day window at a conference, I met some people that have just absolutely changed my life, and will continue to change my life, and it's been wonderful. So if I had to go back and make that trade again on January 4th, 2016, and you said I have to live through all this junk and darkness and bad times that I went through, if that is necessary to get me to where I was in the fall and the people I met here and what the trajectory looks like in the future, I'll make that trade all the time. It's worth it. It's worth going through that if this is the upside. So one last time, if there was something in your life in 2016 like mine and you had some darkness, hopefully you already did, but if not, sit down and make 2017 the time where you turn that into a positive first next step. And if that means you need to reach out to some new people and surround yourself with some new people in your life, go do that, because amazing things will become of it. So thank you very much for watching my ramblings, and I'm very curious to see what 2017 will bring. We'll see if I'm continuing to record videos. But thank you very much. Have a wonderful new year, and all my best to you and your endeavors in the future.